The last thing Oliver Easton expected that Monday afternoon was to fall in love over a peanut butter sandwich. He sat on a park bench in Central Park, half of his lunch in one hand, his 6-year-old daughter's backpack at his feet, and the weight of overdue bills pressing on his chest. Wind tugged at his collar. Winter was coming early and he'd forgotten Willow's hat again. "Daddy, she's staring at you," Willow whispered beside him, her mittened hand tugging at his sleeve. Oliver looked up. Across the bench, a woman stood with a to-go coffee in one hand, her other hand wrapped tightly around a croissant. She was staring at the sandwich in his hand like she hadn't eaten in days. Her long, dark hair was windblown and her coat looked too thin for the weather. He raised his brow. "You okay?" The woman blinked. "Sorry, that just smells like actual food. I haven't had a real lunch since Thursday." Willow leaned forward, eyes wide. "You can have some of ours." Oliver fumbled. "Willow," but the woman smiled, her eyes softening. "Only if you're sure." Willow nodded solemnly. "Daddy makes the best sandwiches. He puts honey in the peanut butter." Oliver hesitated. He didn't have much. 2 sandwiches, an apple, and a juice box. But something about this woman, the honesty in her tired eyes, the way she crouched down to Willow's level without hesitation, made him break the sandwich in half and hand it over. "I'm Oliver. This is Willow, and this is lunch." She took it gently, like it was worth more than it was. "I'm Vivienne. And this is the best meal I've had in a week." They sat on that bench for 10 minutes, sharing food and easy conversation. Vivienne didn't say much about herself, but she asked a lot of questions about Willow's school, Oliver's job search, the best playgrounds in the area. She laughed when Willow told her about the time Oliver burned spaghetti trying to multitask. "I was trying to do laundry, cook, and fix the leaky faucet," Oliver said. "Spoiler, I failed at all 3. Vivienne laughed. "You sound like a superhero to me," he snorted. "I'm a single dad with a temp job and a broken microwave. Not exactly Cape material." But she didn't look at him like he was failing. She looked at him like he was enough. When Willow ran off to chase pigeons, Vivienne folded her hands in her lap and turned to him. "You always eat here." "Only on days when I'm not working. Figured the fresh air does us both good." She hesitated. "Would you maybe want to meet here again sometime?" He blinked. "You want to share a sandwich again?" She smiled. "Maybe, or I'll bring something next time, real food. Not just croissants and caffeine." He glanced at Willow, who was now spinning in circles and laughing. "I'd like that," he said honestly. Vivienne stood, brushing crumbs off her coat. "Same time Wednesday," Oliver nodded. "Same bench." She walked away, boots crunching on the gravel path. Oliver watched her go, something warm curling in his chest. He didn't know her last name. Didn't know she was hiding behind sunglasses that cost more than his rent. Didn't know she was on the cover of Forbes last year, or that she had 3 assistants, 2 drivers, and a penthouse overlooking the Hudson. He just knew she liked peanut butter and honey, and she laughed like she hadn't done it in a long time. By Wednesday, Oliver had convinced himself she wouldn't come back. He sat on the bench anyway, Willow beside him, drawing butterflies in her sketchbook. He wasn't sure why he felt nervous. Maybe it was the way Vivienne had looked at him like he mattered. "Are you waiting for the sandwich lady, Daddy?" Oliver chuckled. "I guess I am." She appeared 10 minutes later holding a brown paper bag and 2 coffees. "I didn't bring anything for Willow," she said, apologetic. "I didn't know what she liked." Willow beamed. "I like everything," Vivienne laughed. "Then I'll remember that for next time." They ate together again. This time Vivienne brought chicken salad sandwiches from a small deli in the West Village and a cookie the size of a dinner plate. They talked about books, music, the city. Vivienne listened when Oliver explained how he was trying to get a full-time maintenance job at a building downtown but hadn't heard back yet. "Do you like working with your hands?" she asked. "I like fixing things," he said. "It's simple, straightforward. Problems with solutions." She was quiet for a beat. "I envy that," he frowned. "What do you do?" Vivienne gave a small, crooked smile. "I work in finance." That wasn't technically a lie. Before he could ask more, Willow dropped her cookie and yelled, "You!" They all burst out laughing, and the moment passed. Their lunch dates became a ritual, every Monday and Wednesday. Same bench, same time. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes he did. Once she brought a blanket because the bench was cold. Another time she brought Willow a tiny sketchbook with gold stars on the cover. I saw it and thought of her, she said with a shrug. Willow had hugged her. Oliver had stared at her. He didn't ask how she had time for them. He didn't ask why she always changed the subject when he asked about her job. He didn't ask why her phone never rang, but her driver picked her up sometimes in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. He just liked being around her. He liked her laugh, her honesty. The way she looked at him like he wasn't just a guy scraping by. 3 weeks later, it rained. Vivienne showed up anyway, holding an umbrella in one hand and a bag of warm pastries in the other. "Still want to eat outside?" she asked. Oliver blinked. "You're soaked." "So are you." They both laughed. They found shelter under a tree, huddling close. She handed him a pastry. He brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. Their eyes met. "Vivienne," he said quietly. "What are we doing?" She didn't look away. "I don't know. But I don't want it to stop." He kissed her then, under the tree, in the rain, while Willow giggled and spun in circles behind them, and in that moment, Oliver didn't care who she was or what she did. All he knew was that for the first time in a long, long time he felt like he'd finally found something real. "Do you always do this?" Oliver asked, his voice low as they leaned against the railing of the covered carousel pavilion, watching Willow ride the painted horses with wide-eyed joy. Rain still fell in soft waves beyond the shelter, misting the park in a silver hush. Vivienne tilted her head. "What's this? Show up in the middle of a storm with enough pastries to feed a crowd, charm my kid, then kiss me like it's the most natural thing in the world." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "No," she said, "I don't." He studied her face, trying to read between the lines. "So what changed?" Vivienne didn't answer immediately. She pulled her coat tighter and followed Willow's carousel horse with her eyes. "I spent years in rooms with people who only ask questions to get answers they can use later. This." She gestured toward the carousel, toward him. "This feels different, and I don't want to ruin that by giving you the kind of answers they expect." "I'm not them," he said simply. "I know, that's what scares me." They didn't speak for a while. The music from the carousel played a song Oliver couldn't name, something wistful and old. When the ride stopped, Willow ran toward them, cheeks flushed with excitement. "She let me ride twice," she beamed. "She said I could pick any horse I wanted." Vivienne crouched down. "You looked like you belonged up there." Willow threw her arms around her, completely unprompted. Vivienne stiffened for a moment before slowly wrapping her arms back around the little girl. Oliver watched the exchange, something tugging at the edge of his thoughts. Later, as they walked toward the subway entrance, Willow skipping ahead in her rain boots, Oliver kept his gaze on the wet pavement. "You're good with her." Vivienne's hands were in her pockets. "I wasn't sure I would be." "Why not?" she hesitated. "I was engaged once. Years ago, he wanted kids. I didn't think I did. We ended it before we ever got that far. And now, I don't know," she said quietly, "but I think maybe I didn't understand what it could be like." Oliver stopped walking. "What are you saying?" She looked at him. Her eyes weren't guarded for once. "I'm saying I didn't plan any of this, and I like it more than I should." He opened his mouth, but Willow's voice echoed from the end of the steps. "Hurry, the train's coming." Vivienne stepped past him. "Tell me about your mom," she said over her shoulder. "My mom," she nodded. "You've told me about Willow. About your job, but not about anyone else." Oliver joined her at the turnstile. "She passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry. She was the one who taught me to cook and to fix things. She raised me and my brothers by herself." Vivienne touched his arm gently. "She must have been strong." She was. He didn't say more. She didn't press. They rode the train in silence, pressed shoulder to shoulder as Willow leaned against his side, half asleep. Vivienne's hand brushed his once, then again. Finally, he laced their fingers together. When they reached their stop, she walked with them the few blocks to their building. The neighborhood was quieter now, the rain tapering off. Streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the pavement. Oliver unlocked the door and looked back at her. "You want to come up?" Vivienne froze. "I can't tonight." He watched as she pulled her coat tighter again, as if bracing herself. "Oliver," she said, "there's something I haven't told you." He waited. "I need to go away tomorrow, just for a little while. A few days, maybe a week." "Work," she nodded. "Something like that." He hesitated. "Will you be back?" Her expression softened. "I'll be back. Then I'll wait." Vivienne leaned in and kissed him, nothing rushed, nothing uncertain. Then she turned and walked into the night, her heels clicking softly against the wet sidewalk. Oliver stood at the door for a long time until Willow tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy." "Yeah, she's gonna come back," Willow said with a sleepy certainty. "I know it." He smiled faintly and led her inside. But a part of him stayed on the street, watching the corner she disappeared around, wondering why her goodbye felt like the beginning of something bigger and why the pit in his stomach wouldn't go away. 3 days passed. Then 5, no calls, no messages. By the 7th day, Oliver told himself she owed him nothing. She hadn't made promises. But that didn't stop him from checking the bench every afternoon, hoping, on the 8th day, a man in a charcoal suit approached him at the playground. "Mr. Easton," Oliver turned, instantly on alert. "Yeah," the man handed him a small envelope. "Miss Laurent asked me to deliver this to you." "Miss who?" But the man was already walking away. Oliver opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "I wanted to tell you in person, but I couldn't, not yet. I never meant to lie. I just wanted to be someone else for a while. Someone real. That's what you gave me. I'll explain everything. Soon." He read it twice. Then again, Laurent. He knew that name, Vivienne Laurent, the real estate investor, CEO of Laurent Holdings, one of the youngest billionaires in Manhattan. His fingers tightened around the paper. Everything, the SUV, the careful evasions, the time away, clicked into place. Not just finance, not just busy. He sat down hard on the bench. Willow ran toward him with a plastic dinosaur in her hand. "Daddy, look what I found," he nodded, barely seeing it. She looked at him for a long moment. "Did she write us a letter?" Oliver looked at his daughter. "Yes," he said slowly. "She did." Willow plopped down beside him. "Is she still coming back?" He folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. "I think she wants to." And for the first time in days, he let himself hope again. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the buildings as Oliver stepped into the lobby of the tall, glass-paneled tower on Madison Avenue. The receptionist looked up from her desk, clearly not used to seeing someone in worn jeans and a windbreaker walk in with a confused expression and a 6-year-old in tow. "I'm here to see Vivienne Laurent," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous churn in his stomach. The receptionist blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Oliver said, "but she sent me this." He held out the envelope Vivienne's driver had delivered last week. The woman took it, read the name scrawled across the front, and picked up a phone. After a tense moment, she nodded and gestured toward the elevator. "Top floor, Mr. Easton." Willow clutched his hand tightly as the elevator soared upward, the digital numbers blinking fast. Neither of them spoke. Oliver's mind raced with questions he hadn't let himself ask before. He didn't know what he'd find up there. A dismissal, an explanation. A goodbye. The elevator doors slid open to reveal a vast, open office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stole the breath from his lungs. The space was quiet but not empty. Vivienne stood by the window, her back to them, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and heels that clicked faintly against the marble floor as she turned. She looked different, not just because of the expensive clothes or the sleek ponytail. There was something in her posture, measured, composed, distant. Willow let go of his hand and ran to her. "You came back." Vivienne dropped to one knee, catching the girl in a tight hug. "I told you I would." Oliver watched them, unsure of where to put his hands, what to say, how to stand in a room like this. Vivienne looked up at him. "Thank you for coming." He stepped forward slowly. "You're Vivienne Laurent." "I am," he exhaled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to be her. Not with you, not with Willow," she said. "I needed to be someone who wasn't always surrounded by expectations and headlines and boardroom deals." "You let me think you were." He stopped himself. "I don't even know what you let me think." "I didn't lie," she said gently. "I just left things out, things I didn't know how to explain without losing everything we were building." "I would have understood." She stood, her expression unreadable. "Would you have treated me the same way if you knew the second I sat down on that bench?" Oliver didn't answer right away. "I don't know." Vivienne walked toward her desk, where a small glass case sat beside a stack of reports. Inside was a photo, her and an older woman, both smiling, standing in front of a modest house with peeling shutters. "That's my grandmother," she said. "She raised me after my parents died." She worked 3 jobs, never went to college, and still managed to teach me everything I know about grit. Oliver's voice was quiet. What happened to her? She passed 5 years ago. I bought this company the following year and renamed it after her maiden name. Laurent was hers. Willow climbed onto a leather chair, spinning slightly. Do you live here too? Vivienne chuckled. No, but sometimes it feels like I do. Oliver stepped closer. You're not what I expected. She met his eyes. Neither are you. He studied her face, the one he'd watched light up at simple jokes, the one that had looked utterly content over a sandwich in the park. So what now? Vivienne walked back to him. That depends on whether you're still willing to have lunch with someone like me. He raised an eyebrow. Someone like you. Someone who owns a private jet, has more employees than friends, and hasn't had anything real in a very long time. Willow interrupted, swinging her legs. I think you're real. Vivienne smiled down at her. Thank you. Oliver exhaled slowly. I didn't fall for the penthouse or the business cards. I fell for the woman who sat on a bench in the cold and shared cookies with my kid. Vivienne's voice was soft. That's the only version of me that matters to you, isn't it? He nodded. It is. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, worn notebook. This belonged to my grandmother. She wrote everything down: recipes, advice, even what she wanted me to remember when I was older. Vivienne opened it and flipped to a page, then handed it to him. It read, If you find someone who sees you when you're not trying to be seen, don't let go. Oliver stared at the words for a long moment before meeting her gaze again. She was a smart woman. She'd have liked you. He closed the notebook and handed it back. I'm still not sure how we fit. Our lives are so different. Vivienne stepped closer. Then let's figure it out, together. Willow slid off the chair and tugged at Oliver's sleeve. Can we all go get ice cream now? Vivienne laughed, a warm, unguarded sound that filled the room. I know a place. They make sundaes bigger than your head. Willow's eyes lit up. Yes, Oliver looked at Vivienne. Does this come with chauffeurs and velvet ropes? Nope, she said, grabbing her coat. Just plastic spoons and sticky fingers. As they rode the elevator down, Oliver watched her quietly. She wasn't hiding anymore, and she wasn't trying to impress him either. He reached for her hand. No more secrets. No more pretending, just the 3 of them, walking into whatever came next. The scent of roasted garlic and tomato filled the small apartment as Oliver stirred the sauce on the stove, one hand gripping the wooden spoon, the other steadying a pan of sizzling onions. Willow sat at the table behind him, humming as she colored in a workbook Vivienne had brought over that afternoon, one filled with riddles and logic puzzles that Willow had declared grown-up smart. Vivienne stood barefoot near the counter, sleeves rolled up, chopping basil with surprising precision. You've done this before, Oliver said, tossing a glance over his shoulder. She grinned. I used to cook on Sundays when I was in college. It was the only time I got to slow down. He raised an eyebrow. You went to college? Yes. With a scholarship I almost didn't accept because I was afraid it would mean leaving my grandmother alone. Oliver paused. What changed your mind? She told me I'd already been carrying the weight of 2 lives, that it was time to live mine. Her voice softened. She said I'd learn more from falling flat on my face than from staying safe. Sounds like she expected you to be unstoppable. She expected me to be honest. Even when it was hard, Vivienne said, sliding the pile of basil into the pan beside him. The kitchen was narrow, and when she turned, her hip brushed his. Neither of them moved. You've been quiet lately, he said. It's been a long week. Work, not just that, she murmured. My board's not thrilled about me spending time with someone they can't quantify. Oliver straightened. Meaning me. Meaning you, Willow, this apartment, the fact that I've rescheduled 3 meetings to be here for dinner. He folded his arms. So what happens when they tell you to stop? Vivienne met his eyes. They don't get to tell me who I care about. He searched her face, finding no hesitation there. What if this gets complicated? It already is. She stepped closer. But I'd rather navigate complicated with you than live easy without it. The sauce bubbled behind them, but neither moved to turn it down. Willow looked up. Something's burning. Oliver cursed under his breath and spun around, yanking the pot off the heat. A moment later, laughter spilled from all 3 of them. They ate crowded around the small table, knees bumping, plates full. Willow declared it the best pasta ever made, and Vivienne taught her how to twirl noodles on a fork like a pro. After dinner, as Oliver washed dishes and Willow watched cartoons in the living room, Vivienne leaned against the counter, drying plates. "Did I tell you I bought the building?" Oliver dropped the sponge. "What?" she shrugged. "The one you applied to for maintenance work." "I bought it last week." His jaw tightened. "Vivienne, I didn't do it to control anything," she said quickly. "They needed renovations. I saw an opportunity, and I called the superintendent this morning. He'll offer you the job by Monday." "I don't want a handout. It's not." She set the plate down. "It's a job you wanted. You're qualified. I just cleared the red tape. The rest is up to you." Oliver leaned on the counter, studying her. "You always move this fast," Vivienne smiled. "When it matters." He dried his hands, then walked over to stand in front of her. "You scare me sometimes. Because of who I am." "No," he said. "Because you make me think I can have things I stopped believing were possible." She reached for his hand. "Then let's believe in it together." That night, after Willow fell asleep curled against her dinosaur pillow, Oliver and Vivienne stepped outside to the fire escape. The city whispered below them, neon signs flickering, taxis humming. "I never thought I'd be here," she said softly. "Not just on a literal fire escape, but here, with you." He watched her as she leaned against the railing, moonlight brushing across her face. "I used to think love was something other people found," he said. "People with simpler lives. People who didn't have to choose between groceries and rent." Vivienne turned toward him. "I don't think love cares about that." "I didn't either," he said. "Until you." She stepped closer, her hand resting over his chest. "I don't want this to be temporary." "Then let's not let it be." She looked down, voice quieter. "There's a charity gala next week. The kind with photographers and champagne flutes and people who look at you like you're a price tag. I'd like you to come with me." He blinked. "You want to introduce me to your world. I want to walk into it with you beside me." He hesitated, then nodded. "Willow, my driver, can bring her to the penthouse. I'll make sure there's a sitter she likes, or she can stay with your neighbor if you'd prefer." He touched her cheek. "You've thought of everything." "I've had years of practice pretending I wasn't alone." Oliver drew her closer. "You're not pretending anymore." The gala arrived faster than he expected. Vivienne sent a dress for Willow, and a tailored suit for him, deep gray, crisply pressed, with a pair of polished shoes he never would have bought for himself. When he stepped into the penthouse with Vivienne on his arm, heads turned. The room glittered with chandeliers and cold smiles. Vivienne held his hand tighter. One woman approached, all diamonds and sharp cheekbones. "Vivienne, so this is the man I've heard about." Oliver braced himself. Vivienne didn't flinch. "Yes, this is Oliver Easton. He's a brilliant mechanic, a devoted father, and the reason I remember to eat lunch these days." The woman blinked. "Well, it's a pleasure." As she walked away, Oliver leaned in. "You didn't have to list my resume." "I wanted to," Vivienne said. "You're the most remarkable person in the room." He kissed her then. Right there, in front of the cameras and the whispers, and the people who had never seen her smile like that. By the end of the night, she pulled him aside to a hidden balcony wrapped in ivy and string lights. "I have something to ask you," she said. He raised an eyebrow. She pulled a small envelope from her clutch. Inside was a hand-drawn card, crayons and glitter glued around the words, "Wanna be my forever family." Willow's name was scrawled at the bottom. Oliver swallowed hard. Vivienne's voice barely rose above a whisper. "She asked me to give this to you." He looked down at the card, then back at her. "You knew what it would say." "I hoped." He didn't answer with words. He pulled her close and kissed her until the noise of the gala faded into nothing. The next morning, Willow woke up to pancakes shaped like hearts, a bouquet of sunflowers on the table, and Vivienne sitting at the kitchen counter in one of Oliver's flannel shirts. "Are you my stepmom now?" Willow asked through a mouthful of syrup. Vivienne grinned. "Not yet." Oliver poured orange juice into 3 mismatched mugs. "But we're getting there." And they did, together. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows of the country estate as Willow pressed her face to the glass, watching the horses graze in the misty field beyond. The warm scent of cinnamon and polished wood lingered in the air, and the steady crackle of the fireplace filled the quiet of the drawing room. Oliver stepped in from the hallway, brushing his damp hands on a linen cloth. "She's in love with that pony," he said. nodding toward Willow. Vivienne looked up from the stack of blueprints on the coffee table. I noticed. She named it Pancake. She also asked if Pancake could live with us in the apartment, he added, easing into the seat beside her. Vivienne leaned her head back and laughed, her voice softer than he remembered hearing in the city. Maybe not in the apartment, but here. I think Pancake would be perfectly happy. Oliver glanced around the room, the rich oak beams overhead, the thick rugs underfoot, and the wide windows that let in the gray light of the afternoon. I still can't believe you brought us to a countryside manor for the weekend. You've been working non-stop for 3 months, she replied. I thought you could use a break. He raised an eyebrow. You booked it for us. You designed the renovation plans. You stocked the pantry with Willow's favorite cereal and made sure it had a room full of art supplies. That's not a break, that's a declaration. Vivienne reached forward and closed the blueprint folder. Maybe it is. He stared at her, brow furrowed. What are you planning? I'm buying it, she said simply. Oliver blinked. The house, Vivienne nodded. It's old, barely up to code, and the current owners are looking to sell. I thought it could be ours. He stared at her, stunned. You want to move here? I want to build something that lasts, she said. Not just for me, for all of us. I don't want to keep living in between weekends and city chaos. I want Willow to have trees to climb, you to have space to breathe. And me to have somewhere that feels like home, not just ownership. He was quiet for a long moment, then he reached for her hand. What about your company? I'm not walking away from it, but I've learned how to divide my time. I have a leadership team in place. A COO who's more than capable, and I've already started shifting to a 4-day workweek. She smiled. I don't need to be in every room anymore. Oliver turned toward the window, watching Willow run outside with her raincoat flapping behind her, chasing a pair of ducks across the grass. She's never been this free. She deserves it, Vivienne said. So do you, he looked at her. You're really doing this, she nodded. I've already signed the offer, it'll be ours by summer, he exhaled, stunned. You're not afraid? Vivienne brushed her fingers against his jaw. Not anymore. That evening, they lit candles in the dining room and had a quiet dinner while a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling in the distance. Willow fell asleep on the couch after dessert, curled under a quilt with one arm wrapped around a stuffed unicorn. As Oliver poured 2 glasses of wine, Vivienne stepped out onto the covered porch. She was barefoot, the hem of her dress brushing the wooden planks, hair loose around her shoulders. He joined her, handing her a glass. You look like you belong here. She leaned against the railing. I think I do. Lightning flickered far off over the hills. Oliver set his glass down and turned to her. I've been waiting for the right moment. For what? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. To ask you this. Vivienne froze, her breath catching as he opened the box to reveal a ring delicate and understated, a single sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. I don't have a yacht or a private vineyard or a palace in Italy, he said, but I have this, and I have you. And I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to doubt that again. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the ring. You didn't have to ask. I wanted to. I needed to. Vivienne blinked quickly, tears gathering in her eyes. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like rain and forever. They stood there long after the storm passed, arms wrapped around each other, the porch lantern swaying in the wind above them. Months passed. The apartment in the city became a memory, the kind they smiled about over breakfast on the back patio. The estate transformed slowly, walls repaired, gardens revived, the barn restored. Pancake, true to Willow's naming, became the most spoiled pony in the county. Oliver took over maintenance of the grounds and built a small workshop near the edge of the orchard. He taught Willow how to use a hammer safely and let her paint the door sky blue. Vivienne, true to her word, traveled less and lived more. She took calls from the sunroom, attended meetings via video, and spent her evenings barefoot in the kitchen or reading stories on the porch swing. One spring morning, Vivienne stood in the nursery, her hand resting on her small, gently growing belly. Oliver wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Are you ready for this? He asked. She nodded, smiling. Completely. Willow peeked in from the hallway. Can I help pick the name? Vivienne turned, beaming. You're going to be the best big sister in the world, Willow beamed. I already made a list. Years later, when the trees in the orchard were taller and the windows filled with laughter and light, their home remained a place of warmth, of baked bread and muddy boots and quiet joy. Oliver still fixed things. Vivienne still ran her business, but they did it together. With no secrets, no distance, and nothing left unsaid, it was never simple, but it was real, it was theirs, and it was forever.